Surely, in the course of this preliminary conversation, I'll be handing over to my senior brother, Winston Amwa, who will be on standby. But before we delve into the key issue for today, let's know, we'll be hearing in the initial conversation from Mr. Kwesi Kaboy, who is very learned in the agri sector, followed by Nana Srebo, and also Stephen Odatefio, who is a representative from the World Bank Food Program. So yeah, but before we do that, I have seated here with me in the person is the Managing Director for Agribusiness at Stanbic Bank in the person of Mr. Yao Njonap. He's a good friend, of course. We've been having behind-the-scene conversation. And before I get to him, I'd like you to know that you're watching us live on Joy News. The program is brought to you by kind courtesy of Stanbic Bank, Joy News, and also Labadi Beach Hotel, as well as Graphic Plus. Good morning, Mr. John. I'm good to see you.
Thank you, my brother.
How are you doing? Great. You're looking sharp as always.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Now, today's theme is focusing on tackling food inflation and the necessity to ensure that when you go to the market, whatever you buy is reasonable enough. And even if it's reasonable, it is secured in terms of supply. Why did this theme come about?
Thank you. For us as Stanbic Bank, agri is really at the core of what to do as a bank in terms of our support to growing the economy of Ghana. And in that respect, we are very much particular in terms of our financing approach, our business support to businesses. Because at the end of the day, that is what is going to make Ghana food sufficient to be able to tackle inflation and its related effects on our economy or as a people. So for Stanbic, we deem it very necessary, very essential for us to always devise strategies, products and services that can enhance agricultural production, food sufficiency in the country to tackling food inflation.
You know, consistently, we've seen the food inflation. Last year was a very disturbing year. Surprisingly, coming back into the first quarter of 2024, we've seen inflation coming down. But one constant factor has been the food inflation. In terms of support for most of the SME who are into agribusiness, what position will you say the Stanbic Bank has been able to enhance their productivity?
Thank you. So for SMEs, they are very crucial and very important in what we do as a bank. And in that respect, we have a varied products and services that we are able to support them, enhance their productivity or nurture them in general to be able to scale up in terms of their production capacity in making their production worth the while. So at Stanbic, what we do is to engage these clients with our value proposition that would enhance their production. And for all you know, these are the SMEs that will grow up to become the multinational companies in the future. So we take them very serious in terms of our financing approach to them, in terms of nurturing them from end to end, to be able to make sure that they get the right footing, the right standing in terms of their operations, whatever support that they need, be it technical or financial, we're able to provide that to make sure that they are self-sufficient in terms of their production capacity. And in all that, the aim is to get, the country ready for food sufficiency in terms of production.
All right, so let's look at it from a generalistic perspective. When we look at the sector, there's been conversation from farmers that the banking sector has been a bit laid back in terms of giving access to long-term loans. Farming is in seasons. What has changed this time around? Looking at the financial sector, how things are faring, and the outlook for investing in the farming agri sector.
Okay, so largely agri is seasonal. We are able to develop long-term funding mechanisms to support these businesses. We have products, wide range, that target those who are into short-term production cycle. To be able to meet the seasonality in some of these businesses. We have the long-term funding arrangements that are able to tackle the long-term projects within the agri-value chain. Mm-hmm. So whichever way you look at it, whether it's short-term, medium-term, or long-term, as a bank at Stanbic, our products and services are geared towards structuring deals and packages that are able to meet the medium, the long term, and then, the short-term needs of these clients to be able to meet their needs in particular ways that can help them produce sufficient food for the people of Ghana.
Well put, Mr. Yao Ngabe. It's really good having you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today's conversation is going to be a lasting one in the minds of people who are watching us right now on Joy News. We're also live on our social media handles on joynews.com, and also get to our YouTube page and be watching today's conversation. It's going to be very insightful. Don't make sure you don't miss every facet, because we have the right people with the right experience and with the right technical know-how to really engage us in this conversation. Standing by is my senior brother, Winston Amwa, who is taking over the conversation from here. My name is Winston Taki. So, Winston, over to you.
Thank you very much, Winston Taki, and good morning to all of you, and welcome to the Graphic Business Stanbic Bank Breakfast Meeting as the second quarter. And this quarter, the focus is on food and agriculture. The focus on ensuring the sufficiency of the agricultural sector to be able to tackle food inflation. As we all know, in the 2024 May CPI, food inflation at 22.6%. But if you compare that to, last year May, which was about 50%, many of you may say we have done well. But I'm sure for those who like to deal with the figures, they'd say there's still room for improvement. I've been checking the 2023 trade report as presented by the Ghana Statistical Service, and it talks about the fact that we imported some 26.7 billion of food into this country. And if I begin to break it down, you'd be surprised. For instance, shea nuts. Yes, something that many of us believe is in abundance in this country. We imported some 2 billion of shea nuts. Frozen cuts and offal of fowl, 1.8 billion. When it comes to guts, bladder, and stomach of animals, 1.3 billion. Fish frozen, 867 million. But of course, cereals, as in grains, 2.7 billion. Rice, 2 billion. The question is, how do we ensure that we're able to produce more and reduce the rate of inflation by way of reducing our exports? I'm sure we all know that by reducing our imports, because we know the more we import, coupled with the challenges of the Ghanaian cedi, inflation increases. And so, like me, many of you will be shocked when you get to the market and you're told, oh, the tomatoes that you bought for 150 paint 2 weeks ago is now 200 Ghana cedis. And the worst part is that one goes for 5 Ghana cedis. We can't continue like that. And so this morning, we're going to have that conversation on how we can ensure sufficiency within our agricultural sector. And through that sufficiency, we'll tackle food inflation that plays a major role in the rate of inflation in this country. My name is Winston Amwa. We're live on the Joy News channel and on Joy 99.7 FM. I'll be in charge of this ceremony. All your concerns have been taken from previous editions. No too many questions from me. You be the ones to ask all the questions. But before we continue, we'll take some brief remarks from the MD of Graphic Communications, Atuafo. Welcome him with a round of applause.
The Chief Executive of Stanbic Bank Ghana, Kwame Asumini, our expert panelist, Mr. Kwesi Kobo of Gesal Limited, Nana Yao Srebo of Srebo Farms Limited, and National Best Farmer 2022, Stephen Odatifio of the World Food Programme, Dr. Valentin Mensah, representing the Graphic Communications Group Board, the management of the Graphic Communications Group Limited, the editor, Graphic Business, our distinguished participants, ladies, gentlemen, and our audience member networks, across our digital and other media partner networks, it is always a privilege to welcome and share a thought with you at our breakfast meeting, made possible by Graphic Business and enabled by Stanbic Bank Ghana. We concede that there are some economic headwinds that this market is facing. And linked to that are associated high cost of living, fueled by factors both internal and others international, including logistic considerations. This brings to the fore the vision of a high degree of self-sufficiency and import substitution. And in my mind, it foregrounds the national vision of Ghana beyond aid. This, therefore, makes our topic for this Graphic Business Stanbic Bank Breakfast Meeting in most apt, enhancing agricultural sufficiency to tackle food inflation in Ghana. We've assembled a panel of experts, and I believe they will do justice to that. But from a layman's point of view, I will make 3-4 notes. First of all, I believe that if we're able to work at improving yields on the same acreage of land that we continue to till, we may be in a better place. 2, enhance processing to avoid the high incidence of post-harvest losses. I used to live and work on the continent for a number of years, and in countries spreading the Southern Africa, Eastern Africa region, where maize is a basic staple, as is ours. When maize is harvested, it is processed, milled, bagged, stored. You can find maize meal in the shop after August harvest in our current situation. Here we eat fresh corn on the cob. We call it millie in South Africa. By August, when the harvest is through in southern Ghana, September, October, maize is short and the prices may have gone up. I believe that if we enhance processing, it will create some buffers and it will even create better opportunities for people who work in the value chain. 3, for me, is devise strategic storage facilities. And it's linked to the point 2 that I was making. We are not storing enough. We are busily bringing in other people's stored products in rice, in maize, in whatever, that are not fresh products. If you have tasted fresh rice before, locally grown in Ghana, you will know the difference in taste between fresh rice and that imported rice that you would call perfumed or whatever that you would want to describe it as. Fourthly, I think we need to work at developing strategic marketing, which includes packaging, amongst others, to create local value for the farmers and export saliency for those who work in that value chain. From this point, I am confident that the Graphic Business Stanbic Bank project teams have assembled the requisite skills in our 3-member panel to give us pragmatic insights on how to address and enhance agricultural supply to tackle food inflation. On behalf of the board and management of the Graphic Communications Group and the editor Graphic Business and my partner, Chief Executive of Stanbic Bank, I welcome you.
Thank Thank you very much, MD of Graphic Communications Group. And you make a very important point. We have to increase our yield. We have to produce more. We have to store. And we have to package effectively. And like you indicated, for many of us who are consumers of local rice, at least we know that it tastes better and more nutritious than rice that have been stored for 5 to 10 years and brought to us when there are new yields. On that note, we'd invite the CEO of Stanbic Bank, Kwame Nasmening, to give us some brief remarks. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Winston, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My co-host, Mr. Atoafo, Chief Executive of Graphic Corporation, our distinguished panelists and discussants, invited guests, colleagues at Stanbic, thank you very much for coming. This topic of agriculture is a very important one for Stanbic Bank. Our purpose at Stanbic is that Africa is our home and we drive her growth. And as we think about growth across the continent, there's always a bias towards the hydrocarbon and extractive industries. That those sectors have gotten most of the attention. But as we think more and more about some of the ills that are confronting the world, poverty being one of the biggest, climate change the other, and inflation. Inflation is emerging as a big issue for governments and citizenry all over. Agriculture is the proverbial low-hanging fruit. As a bank, we're very much aware that oftentimes the conversation around agriculture centers on the lack of finance. And today we're hoping that with the partners so assembled, we'll be able to have a good conversation on what other factors, in addition to access to finance, can help unlock this proverbial low-hanging fruit. But I just want to leave us all with one thought, that most of the banks that are involved in agriculture today, commercial banks, don't have patient capital. Agriculture requires a lot of patience. For any of you who've done any backyard farming, which I have done, but people don't believe me when I say it, it requires a lot of patience. Unfortunately, a lot of the financing we provide isn't patient in nature. And so one of the big issues we'd like to unlock is ways in which we can better align the needs of the farmers for patient capital, patient financing, with the type of financing that we're providing. But I'm sure you all agree that there are other issues relating to the entire value chain. We spoke about post-harvest losses. A few months ago, I spent a working day in Nkranza to visit one of our national best farmers, Mr. James Boateng. He has a farm in Nkranza. And one of the big issues he spoke about was the fact that come harvest time, they either have to sell their mangoes at a loss, or a big percentage of their mangoes go waste. And so there are a lot of other issues that we would have to address within the agri-value chain. But I'm looking forward to this very important discussion. And my big thanks goes to our partners at Graphic Corporation, our media partners, Multimedia, Labadi Beach Hotel, and then all of you who've come here this morning. So thank you very much, and look forward to a very robust discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kwame Nasmening, who's CEO of Stanbic Bank. Well, I believe you when you say you've engaged in backyard farming. I believe you. I believe you because, maybe you were fortunate not to have made losses like I did when I went into maize farming, but I learned my lessons. The most important thing is you learn your lessons, and you don't repeat them the next time. And so you're right. Farming needs a lot of patient capital. If you don't get it, you're lost. But that's not all. You must also have the right technology and the right personnel. Because if you don't have the right people, managing your farms, you would go back and realize that you've lost everything. Like someone shared with me this morning, he lost $100,000 poultry farm because his farm manager decided to cut corners, like we say in Ghana, and buy the feed from a different source, resulting in the death of all his birds. So that's an investment gone waste because the farm manager just didn't do the right thing. But how do we ensure we do the right things? How do we ensure we're able to increase yields? How do we ensure we have appropriate technology when it comes to seedlings? We have the appropriate seedlings that can help increase our yield on the same land. It's a conversation we must have. And this morning, as you indicated, we have the right panel to join us, have this all-important conversation. So let's get started. And I'll start by introducing the panelists. Let's welcome the CEO of GESEL, Mr. Kwesi Kobo, with a round of applause. Please take a seat up here for us because I have been informed that you have a presentation and you'll be setting the tone with that presentation before we get into all other discussions. Nana Sribo is CEO of Sribo Farms and 2022 National Best Farmer. Last but not least, Stephen Odatefiu is a rep from the World Food Programme. Great, so we're all set for the discussion, and like I indicated, because of the concerns from previous editions, I'm not going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to open it up so that all of you who have questions are able to ask your questions. I may just ask a question or two and then leave it to all of us. But the most important thing today is enhancing food sufficiency or agric sufficiency and its efficiency. And so we know the problems. MD, Graphic Communications Group, CEO Stanbic Bank, they've all talked about the problems and have even gone ahead to tell us what they believe should be done. It's up to our team of experts now to share their own views on what else can be done in ensuring that we don't come back next year still talking about food inflation. That we don't come back and say, oh, this is the season for tomatoes, so the prices come down. Well, this is not the season. I mean, forgetting that in Ghana, when prices go up, hardly do they come down. So they may go up this year, you say, oh, they would come down. But once you become used to it, you forget that, it could have actually come down because that person who sells maximizes profits. But let's start the conversation. I'd like to start off with you, Mr. Kwesi Kobo, because I know you have a presentation that sets the tone for this conversation about enhancing agric sufficiency to tackle food inflation. Let's get it started. You could just pick a microphone there, if you don't mind, or if you want to come here. Okay, no problem, please do.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Nana, my good friend, so that with you, Kwamina, and then Mr. Afo, Ato. Can I get the... Oh, I'm lost. Where do I... Can I get help? Great. Where do I... Great. So, good morning again. Sorry for this. Some of us were BC, born before computers, so you can understand. So, when I got a call from Franklin that I should be part of a panel, it frightened me because I asked myself, why me? But that's the way life goes. And what is the topic? The topic is, what are the causes of food inflation and how do you address it in Ghana? And Franklin then said, can you juxtapose it against other countries in Africa and then in a wide global world? So I said, yes, I'll do that. So, my screen is off. Okay, is it showing? Okay, great, good. So in Africa, I selected Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa. Nigeria because, we are competing with them on jollof rice, so a very appropriate competitor. South Africa, we know, is a powerhouse in agriculture. And then I selected USA and Brazil. Now, if you look at the graph, and I don't know if you can see the graph. Okay, good. How am I? Thank you. Great. And where do I point this? Can someone help me? Ladies, I'm sorry for these simile delays, but can I get someone to, because I need to show the presentation. Comes so okay. I've been told to hang on for a minute. Okay, good. So here we are now. Now, what I have here is food inflation figures for 5 countries. Like I said, I selected Nigeria and South Africa, and then took Brazil and USA. And this data starts from 2014 to 2024 as at the half of this year, get to half of the year. So you realize that generally, food inflation for Ghana and Nigeria has been a bit higher than those from USA, Brazil, and South Africa. But what you realize that from 2021, there was an uptick. Now, and even there was an uptick for also all the other countries. Of course, we all knew what happened during the COVID era. Global chain supply hitches, and so forth. So that's understandable. Where do you? No. Today I'm in trouble. Technology is failing me. Can we go back? Okay. Okay. So, okay, then can we go back to the graph then? I think that would be better. Great. So you realize that there was an uptick after 2021, and of course, we all know some of the issues. COVID struck, global supply chains were affected. But for Ghana and Nigeria, also, you realize that since COVID and post-COVID, we've seen a lot of foreign exchange, depreciation of our local currencies in Ghana and Nigeria. So it's not surprising that we being major importers of food, it's not surprising that we witness this kind of food inflation. And I will point out and I'll give empirical reasons for why it is so. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So, to demonstrate this, I decided to use the poultry value chain. And I'm sure we all know how we get our chicken, right from production, right up to markets. But just to understand that there are various activities along the key activities on the chain. So but I'm doing this to illustrate a certain point when I get to my next slide, and you understand where I'm coming from. So can we go to the next slide? Now, this is a very important slide, and it speaks about our poultry consumption. Now, a number of things should strike you. One is that we don't consume enough chicken in Ghana. We do about 13.7 kilos per person. And in the US, we're talking about 57.7 kilos, almost 4 times what we consume in Ghana. But then what is critical is the amount of imports that make up our consumption of poultry in Ghana. And that is very telling. And that can explain why food inflation is high in Ghana and in some way in Nigeria. You realize that in the US, imports of poultry just makes up 0.52% of their total consumption. And guess what? They consume close to 19.16 billion kilos of poultry. If you take Brazil, imports of poultry is just about a mere insignificant 0.21%. They consume close to 10.84 billion, and the average per capita consumption is 50.6. South Africa, which Ato mentioned in his earlier on remarks, consumes about 38 kilos per person. They do about 2.26 billion kilos, and then imports make about just around 20.4%. Ghana, we consume the least, but we consume more imports. And in Ghana, we're talking about 83.09% of our imports of poultry, of our poultry consumption is imported. So when food inflation goes up, are we surprised? We shouldn't be surprised. And this is a story, and I'm using the poultry industry to illustrate why we're seeing food inflation surging over the last few years. Can we go to the next slide? Now, for Kwame now, who is a backyard garden enthusiast, I don't know what he's farming, but for those of you who keep chickens in your backyard, maize is a major food for chickens. You agree with me? So if you want to be competitive, it means 2 things. That your maize price should be very, very low. Now, if you take poultry feed, maize constitutes about 55% of the cost. Thereabouts. You've got soybean and other additives. So if you want to be competitive, your price of maize should be competitive, or else you will lose the plot. You won't be competitive against the US, Brazil, and other countries. Now, and how do you measure that? You measure that through the productivity of maize production in these various countries, because that's the best proxy you can use. So I take Ghana and Nigeria. Our production system is made up of smallholder farmers. And currently in Ghana, we're doing about 2.48 metric tons per hectare. So what does that mean? I'm a smallholder farmer. I'm doing 2.48 metric tons. My production cost is the same as the one in Brazil or the US or in South Africa. So I'll need to compensate my lack of yield with a high price. Same with Nigeria. If you take South Africa and Brazil, what we have here are averages between their smallholder and their large-scale farmers. Even there, a smallholder in Brazil probably be about 30 acres or probably more. And my analysis shows that for the large scale holders, they're talking about 7 to 8 metric tons per hectare. But on the average, South Africa and Brazil are talking about 5.29. So straight away, you can understand why in Brazil, in South Africa, South Africa is 20.9 in terms of imports in their poultry consumption. You understand why they are more competitive than we are. Now, let's go to the good old United States of America. 10.86. Poultry imports, negligible or insignificant or does not exist. And you can understand why we are where we are now. So it throws up a lot of things here. If we want to tackle food inflation, we need to increase our productivity to become competitive. Next slide. So my job is two ways. One is to create a scene, stimulate, be mischievous, and allow our panelists to discuss it. And then two, be part of the panel and then look for solutions to the issues I've raised. So I'm an actor on two stages. But there are some key challenges that I'd like to share with you. And I believe that Nana and my good friend will be able to dissect and we'll come up with some very good solutions to make this a very complete program. One is this, is what I call government versus private sector. Africa, we have situations where you've got government, public sectors or institutions leading the agricultural drive. And you ask yourself this question, who does the farming? Is it the Ministry of Agriculture or is it the private sector? Who's leading who? Is it the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail? And policies are made by those who are not in the field of theater. Those who are in the field of theater have no way of influencing policy. So we come out with various projects without any recourse to those who are supposed to prosecute those projects. That's one of the key challenges we face. The second one is what I call weak policy and regulatory framework. Who checks whether the agrochemicals we use are of good quality? It's about yield. Land acquisition. Issues bordering regulation of inequality. Who does that? Maybe a bit on finance. So there's so many issues that fall within that regulatory remit that we leave as a problem. The third one is untargeted research and development. I'm sure my scientists would pick up a fight with me here, but if you go around institutions, are we carrying out research that inures to the benefit of agribusiness in this country? Yes, there's research going on. But are we doing enough? Does it address the needs of the industry? From where I sit, I would say no. A lot needs to be done. The fourth one is technology. And let me pause here a minute. Because people think that technology is about having a smartphone and apps and so forth. No. Technology is about having appropriate technology at the right time. So seed is a technology. Whether it's hybrid seed, it's GMO. We've heard this, people fighting over GMO in this country. And as myself, we're all consuming GMO indirectly. Whether you eat Kellogg's cornflakes or you eat poultry imported from the US, you're consuming GMO. Don't deceive yourself. Because the feed obviously will come from maize that is GMO. But technology is about efficiency. And in any business, because agribusiness is a business, your marginal revenue should be higher than your marginal cost. And if technology brings about efficiency and it's expensive, then there's no point following it. So it's about systems. It's not about how fanciful, how expensive it is. No, it's about systems. Then the financial ecosystem. Maybe I should be careful because I work in one, and my host is Stanbic Bank, so I should be extremely careful. But you know, in financial ecosystem, there are two parties who come to tango. You have the demand side, and you have the supply side. The supply side are the banks. And let me put a record that we've seen a tremendous change in banking's approach to agricultural lending over the last few years. Maybe, if I can rightly say, maybe the firm I work for has been instrumental in that, but that I'll leave it to the bankers to decide. But then there's been changes, but has there been any change from the demand side? Those who borrow, are they clear what they want to do? Do they know what they are doing? Have they looked at all the risk? Do they have the requisite personnel? Is there a strong governance system within their institutions? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Because the two need to come to the table with clean hands. The two need to come to the table to work together. And if they don't work together, we will not get to where we want to get to, having an efficient financial ecosystem. Then, of course, climate change. But for some of us, climate change can always be mitigated in a certain way, but not in every way. But it's something that we need to look at. So, for example, seed. People say, well, it's not a time for GMO. I say, well, maybe this is a time for GMO. Because you need seeds that are drought tolerant. If you all remember, fall armyworm came on our shores in 2017. We saw the scare and saw the kind of havoc it wreaked in our country, all over Africa. These are things that we need to keep as food of. So climate change brings in its wake new pests, new invasive pests, new diseases, and so forth. Now, how do we fight it? And I think that there are solutions there. We need to embrace these solutions. But those are challenges we need to confront ourselves with. Then our production system. You know, Brazil in the 70s was like us. They were like us. They decided to go through a reform. They were doing cocoa like us, but they realized that they could do other crops that gave them value per the same resources that they could use to get high yields and more money for themselves. And today, Brazil is a powerhouse. Now, they went through that through what we call large-scale production. The challenge of Africa, and Ghana in particular, is this fascination about smallholder, to the detriment of our move in the agricultural landscape. And let me explain properly before I am taken on social media. I don't want trouble. It's simply this. We conflate food security with industrialization. We conflate social needs of agriculture with industrialization. Agriculture is not a social endeavor. Like Sundays, we go to church. From church, we go to our fellow societies. It's not. If we want to see the impact of agriculture on food inflation, it has to be seen as a business. Of course, as a business, it will address some of our social needs. After all, poverty disappears when money comes. But if you don't make money, poverty stays. So food security is important for us, but industrialization is also critical. Number two, the beauty about agricultural products are that they meet industrialization and they meet food. So if you take maize, for example, it's good for biofuel. In Brazil, it's a major biofuel component. But maize is also good for poultry. But maize is also good for us for our kenke, fanti kenke, ga kenke, abelema, all kinds of, no abelema, banku, akpele, and all kinds of things. So one crop, various uses. And that's the beauty about agricultural products. So we've got to be clear in ourselves. What is that we want as a country? Atu spoke about issues of processing and so forth. All agricultural crops are seasonal. If any at all, they are biological. They have to go through a certain time. Tree crops are seasonal. Mangoes, cashew, shea, they are all seasonal. Crops that are annuals, they have to go through a biological tenure, a period. 3 months, 4 months, depending on which annual. So within that space, they won't be available. How many of us are willing to say we will buy, today we all go to the fast food restaurants and we buy French fries. These are potatoes perfected, sliced in bags, and we buy it and we give to our children. Why can't we do the same for yam and plantain? Can't we change our eating habits to accommodate that? Or else we'll go to a situation where food inflation keeps going up. But then I'm now migrating to solutions, so I will stay on course. The last slide before I sit down. The last slide. The last slide. Okay, all right. So I'll create my own last slide. I have something I call the 3 C's. Coherence, collaboration, and coordination. Policy coherence, policy collaboration, and then policy cohesion. Now let me explain why I'm saying this. Agriculture is a multi-sectorial sector. That's a mouthful. Agriculture is not just residing in agriculture. You need road network. You need access to land. You need access to water. You need access to finance. So it cuts across all sectors. So if we want to see how Brazil got to where they are today, it's because they broke the barrier and they allowed all other sectors to get involved in a cultural push. In Ghana, unless we look at agriculture as a cross-sectorial, multi-sectorial endeavor, trust me, we will provide all the answers here, but next 5 years, we'll come back and lament and say the same things. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's give another round of applause. Thank you very much, Kwesi Kobo. Setting the tone for the conversation, you've told us, all the challenges that we are faced with, and like you ended, it's important we get into the solutions, and of course, you'll be part of the panelists as we get into the solutions. But, Nana Srebo, because you are a farmer, 2022 National Best Farmer, I start off with you. It's very simple. We know the problems. How do we deal with it? How do we solve these problems that all of us know, and yet every time we sit down to talk, they're the same problems we talk about? How do we solve them?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me stand on the existing protocol and also thank the organizers of this program. I think the next time I would go first, because basically Mr. Kobo and Mr. Afo has said everything I was going to say. So I would have said that I agreed with them and just left to my hometown. Anyway, I always say that among this litany of issues that has been enumerated, I always say that the crux of the matter, to me and with my experience, lies with having a strong private sector partnership with government. I say, and I'll always continue to say, that government has no business venturing into business activities at all. Government is rather supposed to create the enabling environment for the private sector to thrive in our enterprise, and that is agriculture. If you look at the policies, a lot of policies have been implemented, a lot of things have been done, but as you said, we are still as we are now. And I see that we will still continue to be there if the private sector doesn't come in to augment the work that government is doing. And how does the private sector comes in? It has to come in with having a strong enabling platform where government levels the road for the private sector to roll. And that is why I strongly believe in this project of planting for food and jobs too. If you look at it critically, it tackles agriculture along its entire value chain. And that is how we should see agriculture. Agriculture is not something that starts, it's not a farming venture. Agriculture is from the farm to table. If you don't look at it that way, then definitely you'll be tackling it in bits and pieces. If we look at the value approach of the planting for food and job, it takes into effect the input credit systems. It takes into effect the storage and distribution. That is key for addressing post-harvest losses, as has been said right now. It takes into effect infrastructure, which will also have to make sure that the government has to make sure that the right environment is created for private people to get into some of these things. It takes into effect off-taker arrangement. It takes into effect digitalized platform, a line of site management and coordination, as was said right now. So I believe that the private sector involvement in all this, agriculture is a very expensive venture. And as MD rightly said, it's so expensive that the banks cannot just take up that mandate. We need a strong enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. We need government to set up the private sector to give us funds that have low interest bearing for us to invest, or the private sector to complement the effort of government, and then also to push up all the measures and all the policies that government has doing. If we leave it just for government has no business venturing into business activities. Government is supposed to create that enabling environment. So I think government has to do more. Honestly, if you look at what Mr. Kobo just enumerated, a lot, that is just it, the policies. But if we have a strong enabling environment for the private sector, and there is good coordination, that is when we know that what you are doing, the farmer should not be thinking about marketing. If you look at cocoa has been able to thrive because the farmer doesn't think about marketing. And who is doing the marketing? You should have a strong private aggregator system to be doing that. The government cannot get into it. And once that is being done, it will have a rippling effect. Once the farmer knows that what he is doing is going to be bought, then definitely he's going to produce more. And once the government is also giving that enabling environment, then I think we can push this whole agenda forward. Without a strong collaboration between the private sector and the government, I think it cannot be achieved. We just be talking every day.
No, you talk about the fact that government has no business doing business. You've talked about the fact that there's a need for collaboration. But let's break down the collaboration a little bit. Because Mr. Kwesi Kobo, for instance, has talked about productivity. So when it comes to productivity, for instance, which is where we are lacking so much, what sort of collaborations do we need here to ensure that we improve our productivity?
How do we start production? We start by tilling the ground. And we have to mechanize. And Mr. Kobo ended very well by saying that we have to look at the industrialization aspect. As much as we go into agric for food, we also go into agric, for industrialization. And that is, if you look at the planting for food and job, I'm very happy that the phase 2 tackles commercial farming, unlike the phase 1 that didn't tackle commercial farming. But in the first place, we ask ourselves, how do we start production? By tilling the land. Do we have enough machinery even to till the land? How do we start it? We have to have a strong plant pool. You want somebody like me, a young person who has finished university, to get into a 5-acre farm. How is he going to buy a tractor? How is he going to buy combine harvester? But if there's a strong plant pool that has been facilitated by government through the private sector, he can start the farm and then just go there and rent. That will bring the cost of production, that will bring everything down right from the beginning. So right from there, and you go to improve seeds. Even when you talk about the tractors, government should be able to liaise with other government who are into the production of these tractors, to come and bring some of these tractors to even the commercial farmers on high purchase. That is what is the fundamentals. If you don't start it right, we'll never get it right. I always say that Agriculture is about the start and the end. If you do engineering, they will say that a plane, the most serious aspect of a plane taking off is the start and the landing. And that is, the same thing applies to agriculture. How we start. We don't start right. If you look at how we are doing agriculture, at the end of the day, if even we are able to do, what is the bottom line? We're not going to be competitive. Okay. Look at the graph that is shown here. So we need to start it right. And starting it right needs government intervention in improved seeds. It needs government intervention in plant pool. We are lacking a lot in plant pool. So we are doing subsistence farming, the labor, no improved labor, and the cost of even tilling the land is so expensive that by the time you are done, you're out of business.
Great. Let's get to Stephen, and let me find out from you also what you believe should be done to enhance sufficiency to tackle food inflation. Having listened to Kwesi Kobo explaining all the problems that we have within the sector.
Right, thank you very much. So I think just to amplify some of the issues that he created, I think every one of us over the course of the week would have some sort of rice, stew, and chicken on our plates. It's pretty much our staple diet. And I think it's a food security situation because about 85% of what we consume as Ghanaians is actually imported. So that pretty much speaks to what Mr. Kobo actually highlighted. And that is very worrying for us because the combined value of what we are importing in rice, in tomatoes, and then of course in poultry is north of about $1.2 billion. And I think what government has done, because prior to joining the WFP, I worked at the Ministry of Finance and led the operationalization of the Ghana Cares Economic Enclave. Now, government's mandate or vision, and that's pretty much the first time since General Kutua Champon initiated the economic enclave concept in the 70s, was that government would actually create economic enclaves and provide infrastructure to de-risk the sector and then invite private sector to take up lands that have either been developed or have been, that have seen some sort of development by government. So typically in the Kasunya enclave, which was the first enclave, it's about 10,000 acres of land, government will provide the electricity, will provide the storage infrastructure, will provide the accommodation. And because it was a rice-dominated enclave, government would also develop the canals and the drains that allow any private sector individual coming in to just go into production. So that emphasizes on the need, as Nana had said, that government has no business in production, but should rather be a catalyst in terms of how they incentivize private sector to go in. So, for example, the average cost of actually developing a piece of land for rice production per acre is about 40,000 cedis. If you're going to do commercial agriculture, you are doing pretty much about 40,000 cedis times 100 hectares as the minimum to qualify as a commercial player. Now that's quite expensive, and then you are not able to free up working capital to then do production. So government takes that cost, and then all you have to do is just invest pretty much into the production. Now that's a step in terms of what we are currently doing to fix that issue. So beyond the Kasunya enclave, government has also secured 20,000 acres in the Oti region that is focused on just maize production. They've been able to operationalize about 2,000 hectares so far. In Kasunya, they've actually operationalized all about 6,000 hectares, working with private sector players. And then also there is the National Service Scheme Economic Enclave in the Kumewu region that is also looking at maize, soybean, and rice. So I think the foundations are being laid for the first time in about 60 years to, I think, address that issue. Number two is the question of why maybe you'd have a panelist in a World Food Program official being on this panel. So I think in 2018, the World Food Program transitioned its mandate from just a saving lives narrative to also changing lives. So pretty much what it entailed is that we're gravitating away from the typical food assistance or humanitarian aid that a logistic-focused institution or a UN institution like the World Food Program was focused on. And we just moved also into food resilience and providing sustainable development initiatives. So in 2018, to hallmark that transition, we invested into not microprocessing, I think big players in the processing industry, Yedent and then Premium Foods. We invested a combined value of about $3 million in these institutions. With Yedent, what we did was that, with Premium Foods, what we did was that we connected them to emergency struck countries like the Burkina Faso, Yemen, Afghanistan, etc. through this investment. So basically, we would offtake all their produce or a majority of it, and then we would then be the suppliers to these countries that need them. That was the first model. The second was also Yedent, where we invested about $800,000, moving their processing capacity from 3 metric tons to about 80 metric tons. So that speaks to why we are being quote-unquote transactional, because it's critical to how we actually incentivize farmers to be able to do more. Now, I think a major deterrent to farmers actually going into production and not cutting corners is also the issue of post-harvest loss, as had been indicated by the Graphic CEO. And let me create this connection for you. You're farming basically on 2 acres of land in the Aveima irrigation scheme. You're looking to get in about maybe 2 tons per acre. And so that's about 4 tons on 2 acres. You're looking at a price point of about 6,000 Ghana cedis, which gives you about 24,000 Ghana cedis in terms of expected income, because your income is realized when there's an off-taker to buy that produce after production. Now, there are issues with birds, and then there are also issues with nets. So if you don't have nets to protect your rice from birds, then you're losing close to half of your projected income on that. Then let's say you get past the issue of nets because you got some financing from an agribusiness focused bank that actually requires you to pay back in about 3 months, or pretty much a moratorium of about 3 months, where you start paying every single month. Now, you're done with production, you've harvested, and then you have to dry the rice. Now, you also need a dryer or a basic tarpaulin. You don't have that, so now your expected income has gone from half, where you didn't have the bird nets or bird scares, to even pretty much about 5,000 Ghana cedis of expected income, because you've not been able to capitalize fully due to a lack of post-harvest equipment in a dryer or just the bed nets. So why would a farmer want to go into agriculture and deploy all the needed expenditure, which is the certified seeds and then, of course, the fertilizers, to actually do that, because his expected income will be realized if he has those resources? So these are the drawbacks. But then the economic enclave answers the question of what we call collaboration and coherence, because you're having players working within an area, different agribusinesses competing, but having an access to markets mechanism where they can exchange ideas, exchange knowledge, and still meet the yield KPIs that is set by those enclaves. So that's pretty much an outline on what government is doing now. And I think in the next 2 years, we'll see significant improvements in our yield, and that would also have an impact on rise of incomes and farmer livelihoods across the country. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephen. And I was actually at the Economic Enclave Project, the Kasunya sites, and I saw everything that you've talked about. I saw the canals, I saw the road construction and everything, the warehouse. Yes, that's true. But beyond these, let me get to you, Kwesi Kobo, because you started by talking about the problems. Beyond these, what else can be done to ensure sufficiency within the sector?
Winston, thank you. I hope I'm not short for painting a doom and gloom situation, but you know, every dark cloud has a silver lining. Now, you know, sometimes you question our commitment to address agribusiness in this country, because that is a fundamental of why we're having these food inflationary issues. Now, I would like to break things down to the barest minimum. As a country, you have 2 key focus. You reduce your imports, and you also increase your exports. So these things are fundamental, because if you don't generate exports, you don't get foreign exchange. You don't reduce imports, you don't reduce imports, you also lose foreign exchange indirectly. The second point is that I think over the years, we haven't been focused enough on certain specific value chains. You know, and if you ask me, because I know we are now in the government's political parties are writing their manifestos and so forth. Okay. My first advice would be, as a country, we need to ensure that if we agree on this policy, a policy led by private sector, let all political parties adhere to it. There should be a continuous agreement, or we should all bind to it as we move on. That's the first one. 2, I've stated that agriculture is a cross-sectorial thing. Now, I worked in the ministry for some number of years as an advisor, and unless we have a strong commitment for whoever the president is, in my view, someone higher than even a Minister of Agriculture, who, when he summons the Minister of Finance, Minister of Transport, Minister of Trade, will all come around the table. Unless that happens, nothing will happen. And I'm very clear about that. Because even if it's enclaves, somebody has to agree that in his or her budget, we got to do these roads. We've got to begin telecommunications. Okay. Land, for example. This is a country, and I've worked in other African countries, where water bodies, we're even filling and building, putting houses around. In other countries, you will not see this happening in those countries. So for me, policy is a critical thing. Number two, what is it that we want? We can't tackle all our problems immediately. And if you want to tackle the problem, you've got to go to the fundamentals of it. So let me give you 3 examples. Let me just put an example to illustrate my points. We are net importers of poultry. We bring in close to 360,000 metric tons. Whether unfortunately or unfortunately, our city today is about 15 point something. So out of currency depreciation, an opportunity arises that allows us to take advantage of our weakness in our currency. But why aren't we taking advantage of it? We are not, because our maize productivity yields are low. And that is a result of the production systems we have. Okay? If I do my calculation on top of my head, 40 farms, the poultry industry consumes about 250,000 metric tons. That can easily be produced by 20 to 30 large-scale farms in this country. Which means that they are getting the yields of 5-6 tons per hectare, and which means that they're able to sell on the market price lower. If today you go on the South Africa bourse, they have a bourse called the sufficiency. You get the price of maize today and the price of maize in Ghana now. It's almost about 50-60%. And you can imagine the situation in Brazil and USA. It's very difficult to compete. 2, soya. As a country, private sector has put in some level of investments. We have a few soy processing plants. They're not using expertise, they're using extruders, but not high-level solvent extract and so forth. About 3-4 years ago, we saw an uptick in soy production in the various regions of the north. And these beans were being exported. Suddenly, the ministry comes and says, well, we are banning export of soya because it's affecting the poultry industry. But I think that is Maslow theory turned on his head. Why am I saying that? 1, you don't even have the systems in place to process the soybean. 2, export of soybean means that more farmers will produce more soybean. So you are stimulating an industry. And that's why I'm talking about policy incoherence. So you take the poultry sector. How do we change it? How do we take advantage of the fact that the cedi is very weak against the US dollar? Is that you sort out the maize problem, you sort out the soya problem. The rest of the additives which are imported, because of the advantages you get in maize prices and so forth, would offset any disadvantage in bringing these other things in here. So from where I sit and from where I work from, we come out to a number of models. So for example, we decided that in a program I can work with a number of large-scale importers who are interested in setting up processing plants here. But they're talking about an integrated processing plant that covers from field to fork. So control over your raw inputs coming to your feeding your chickens, having an efficient production system, and ensuring that whatever equipment you bring in, you are fully utilizing it. That's how you solve problems, not knee-jerk reactions that we've seen over the years. Let me give an example of rice, for example. We consume about 50 kilos per person, plus or minus, depending on where you are. In the urban areas, higher. In the rural areas, it's lower. What has been our rice story? 2018, we gave a lot of rice seeds to farmers. Some of the seeds were poor quality. Some of them were even grain, fertilizer, and so forth. And we are still where we are. If the imports has even gone up, it means that that policy has failed. Now, we've come up with a model to say, can we have an integrated rice system? Because rice is a peculiar cereal, unlike maize. The drier maizes, the more quality maizes. The drier rices, the less quality rices, because then when you mill, it comes out broken rice. So have a system whereby you encourage large-scale nucleus farms that have embedded in their production systems processing mills. So, for example, we're doing one in our farm plains. We're about to do another one in the enclave that my brother talks about. That is how you tackle these issues. So you take 2 or 3 crops of value chain and you tackle it comprehensively and ensure that everyone has a role to play, plays a role. But we have a situation where things are done haphazardly. And that's why we are where we are. Okay. Let me give an example of export. I mean, I like giving examples. So has anyone asked himself or herself this question? Let's take issue of palm oil, CPO, which Nana is engaged in. We are net importers of CPO. We borrowed inordinate amounts of money to fund the cocoa sector. Where cocoa grows, oil palm grows, rubber grows. Okay? Now, from an agronomic point of view, where there's contiguous production and people are not managing their farms well, you're talking about pests and diseases. Coupled, of course, you know the Galamsey problem has also exacerbated the situation. But you saw how high the cocoa prices went to. So the question I ask myself is, do we still need to do 1 million tons of cocoa? Because if you do less than that, prices go up. So the question I'm saying that we need to be radical in the way we look at issues. Look, I can go on, and sometimes it is sad that if you look at our trajectory, we keep on repeating the same mistakes and expect different results. So my answer is that focus on a few value chains, address it comprehensively, and then when you learn your lessons, you move on. And then the last point is that let the private sector be the lightning rod. Let the private sector be the lightning rod. How often is the private sector consulted or spoken to? How often do we engage them when they come out with these policies? Whether it's PFJ, where the private sector consulted, was that the instruments of the policy, was it the critical ones to address the problems of food inflation? Because if, for example, issues are made that, well, we gave X amount of farmers benefited from PFJ in terms of input supply. But is that why you give farmers fertilizer and seed? You give them fertilizer and seed because you want to see an increase in productivity. And if a measurement of it is how many farmers benefited from being beneficiaries of supplies of fertilizer and seed, that for me, that I think is a failure.
Thank you very, very much. Round of applause. Thank you very, very much, Kwesi Kobo. So I promised at the beginning that I wasn't going to ask many questions. If you realize, I asked only one question each, except that they took time to explain everything. And so we have about 15 minutes to go. We're still live on the Joy News channel and on Joy 99.7 FM. It's your turn now to, tell us what you believe has to be done. I'm sure all of us agree now that we need to talk about the solution. So just show by hand. I'll get a microphone to you. You tell us your name, where you're coming from, and then your question. Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Valentin Mensa. I'm a board member of Graphic. I used to be a farmer, a pineapple plantation of 400 acres.
Okay.
And I exported to Switzerland. So most of the issues that have been discussed, I have first-hand experience, and I've also researched into Ghana's economic development. So I want to add to what have been said and also ask a few questions. Okay, first of all, Mr. Kobo produced a very good graph, but the juxtaposition, I was praying that he would have included Côte d'Ivoire. If he had, would have found the solutions to most of our problems today. Because if you go to Côte d'Ivoire, most of the issues that have been discussed have been dealt with by the government. And food inflation, they do not have that problem in their country. And food is abundant in the areas where the market is concentrated. And with this, I would look at few fundamental areas just to ensure that we conflate the issues. The first one is what I would call market or demand. And that one, Adam Smith told us that if a human being, if you give him the means to get to the market, he will do anything to produce and sell or exchange. So here in Ghana, if you look at the structure of our market or population, you see that we are 57% urbanized. 57% urbanized. And that urbanization mostly in Accra and Kumasi. So when you are producing, you have to look at the market in Accra or Kumasi. You are in a country where it takes more than 8 hours to travel from the western region to Accra. About 7 hours to travel from Kumasi to Accra. In the 19th or 20th century, 1919, Gajisberg told us that how he was going to help us produce baskets of goods. The basket for exports and the basket for internal consumption. And the only way he could do that was to construct the railway from the south to the north. From 1920, that couldn't take place because at that time, the British merchants were more or less controlling the economy. So because it would affect their profit through taxation, they challenged that, and that never happened. So inflation, food inflation from that time was more or less perennial. So 1948, when the riots resulted into the crisis and the British government came, we identified that food inflation is going to be a problem of the country because you don't have a means of transporting the food cheaply. Because if you are tracking the food in lorries or trucks, they are quite expensive.
Please
and
wrap
they take
up.
a lot of time. Okay, so that's what the market is a key thing. So if you have the market, the capital issue will not be an issue because the individual will sell, get the profit, and then save and build the capital. Then the second one is the production, which is also related to the fertility and then capital. Because if you do not have the capital, you cannot buy fertilizer and chemicals. And also when it comes to land preparation, the plant pool was raised, but most of the investors could buy their own tractors and other equipment, and they're all related to capital. But the government policies, I think that's fundamental, and that is what we need to look at. Because if you are not able to produce enough, and you depend on imported food, and you are not controlling your reserves, your currency depreciation would hit you, and then inflation will turn in. So it's a vicious circle.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Dr. Mensah. Yes, let's get to other people. I see two hands. I'll get to you, but okay, where are we going?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Yes. Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Alberta, and I'm HR Kosa. I work with Agri House Foundation.
Could you please stand up so we can see you?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I would like to touch on inputs.
Okay.
Yeah. And Nana Shribo spoke about the government's policies and the second phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs. And I think we would like to know where we are now, because we are just coming from some part in the north, and they've not received anything. We don't know whether it's been rolled out yet or it's yet to be rolled out. I think it's a fantastic policy on paper, but when would we see it on the ground?
Okay.
Secondly is the one key ways we can tackle it. You know, the government also had a policy of ensuring that we have input access across the districts and the regions. We are yet to realize that. And if you're having issues with access to fertilizers, seeds, and logistics, we also had a plan that maybe across all the regions there will be mechanization, machinery, equipment, and all that. When you go to some parts, some of the machines have broken down for many years, and it's still there. It's like, okay. And then, Master, I've not finished. There's no woman. There's no woman on your platform. You let me finish.
To be very honest with you, we must give a lot of people an opportunity.
Yes.
So we just can't leave it with you.
The other one too is with our education. I think we have to tackle it from the ground up. You see, when you go to educational institutions, Kwada, Soda, Mango, Fair River, Adidome, Ohio, now there are no farmlands there anymore. We are doing more theory than the practical aspects of it. And again, the last one is we have to look at our livestock sector. I think it's been downplayed. You know, the idea was to ensure that the livestock and the crop sector are in tandem receiving equal attention. Go to Turaku market. It's a gold mine. It's the largest livestock market in the whole of West Africa. But we are not, the revenue for food agenda has also gone down, which I think we have to look at. So when you're talking about this whole sector, I think the livestock sector also plays a role. And then maybe if government and the private sector can, now we are producing more beef than dairy. In Ghana, we have only one person, a reverend, around Amahia, who is just using one cow to get about 30 kg. Whilst in other countries, we are having more. So I think that the dairy, there are a lot of opportunities also within the sector. I'm a cattle farmer myself, but there is really nothing happening when we are producing more beef. So I think, and then Graphic and Stanbic, please, next time, please, let's have some of the smallholder women farmers, because we are a country and we cannot neglect the fact that most of our farmers are still within the smallholding. Also in Yendi, they produce a lot of sesame. But we are using our manual, our hands. So machinery and equipment has to be looked at, because most of the women are having small opportunity to export now. So let's look at the hot and trendy products. Let's look at products that have value and volumes, so that we can focus on it per region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alberta. But please, let's do it this way. Look, a lot of people would want to make points. If all of us want to talk for a very long time, we may end up not getting many people sharing their views. Unfortunately, time is not our friend. So let's please be very brief. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I would like to commend the panelists for the insightful discussion. My name is Edmund. Nana, recommendations. Based on your experience as a farmer, and we've seen that land litigation has become a major issue in agric. In what way are you will you like to persuade other chiefs who are custodians of the land to make land accessible for agriculture farming? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Temensa. I have two questions. I think over the years, governments have overlooked the importance of the Accra Plain, and now it's developing into a concrete jungle. And when I drive past the Accra Plain, between Dowenya to Vume, we have the Volta River also flowing through this area. We could have irrigated this plain and make it a food basket. But unfortunately, we have allowed that place to become another concrete jungle in the making. Is there anything government can do to stop what is going on? My second bit is the planting for food and jobs. I think our planting season starts from May. Land preparation starts from April, and by May the rain sets in. But as we speak now, I overheard it being talk on the radio that they launched it in, I think, in the Ashanti region last week. And I think the timing is very, very poor. I think the timing is very, very poor. And the policy makers and our leaders, I think it's high time we get the Agric Ministry to start such programs on time to make sure that we get the full potential of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Kweku Oben. I'm a farmer. Tackling food inflation.
Can we turn the microphone on for him so he can ask his question? But maybe while we try to solve that problem, we can come back to the panel. Another was a question for you. The advice that you give to chiefs when it comes to dealing with issues of land. Yes.
Hello? Yes, I think my question is, I have two questions in terms of the land. Yes, land continues to be an issue. And as much as, and that is why some of us who are chiefs are getting into agriculture, encouraging other more chiefs to see the need to get into agriculture and to release land. But it will interest you to know that the research conducted by the FAO of the United Nations realized that the bane to agriculture is not land. It's insufficient access to education, knowledge, and information. As we were saying right now, what is the yield that we are currently having? Currently having a very low yield. And if we are having this low yield, land, access to even more land would even compound it. And as much as we are having this low yield, we are having about 25% of what we are producing going waste as post-harvest losses. So you see, the fundamental of the issues are there. So yes, land is an issue, but to me, I see that if you're able to increase your yield per acre, that would be perfect, than to have more land and not be able to increase the yield. Secondly, about the planting for food and job. Yes, the concept is very good, as I say. And I'm praying that, it will be implemented with the intent and purpose for which it was designed. Very, very, very nice concept. But I agree that it should have been piloted. I think that is why we are having this issue of the late starts. But the concept, if you look at how it encompasses the whole value chain, and how it also encourages private sector participation, you will bear with me that the strategy is perfect. So, yes, I hope that it starts well.
Okay.
But I believe that it should have been piloted this season, and that would have given a more better effect.
Thank you very much, Nana. So can we get back to the questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kweku Oben. I'm a farmer. Tackling food inflation, I suggest that we should continue to make agriculture attractive. And my question is, who is going to buy when you produce what? That's my question, because, for example, when it comes to rubber or latex, when you produce latex, there is a buyer. Ghana Rubber Estate is available to buy. Cocoa, the same. The others, who is going to buy what you produce? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obeng. Okay, I think we can come here. This hand has been up for a very long time. Please, let's get to him.
Thank you very much. My name is Eric Amponsa Boatin. I think if you look at the issue today, we want to understand the cause of food inflation. Okay. Now, you agree with me that in Ghana, agric largely depends on the rain. But one factor now, which is also a challenge, is galamsey. Because you realize that even the one village, one dam, if you are to harvest all the flood waters, especially when we even do the spillage, what happens? Those waters that are in the dam, we cannot use them. The other issue is that we expect government to have a policy. We are looking at tax incentives. For example, the income of the cocoa farmer is exempt. So why can't we do that for all of them? We are also saying that we have, for example, SNIT investing in hotels. Why can't SNIT also invest in farming in Ghana? Because from what I've heard, it is a very, very, very lucrative area if we plan well. Finally, we always say that at the end of the day, whatever that you produce must be bought, okay? But you agree with me that even the roads that lead to the farmlands, and that is why inflation is so high, because productivity is there, okay? But if at the end of the day, we want to buy the produce, but the output, because of post-harvest losses, our inability to store the products. So you find that there's a shortfall, and that is what leads to the food inflation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so I see. Okay, there's a hand there, then we come forward. Yes.
Yes. Good morning. And I agree. My name is Elom from AgriSolve. I do agree with Mr. Kobo that the lenders' confidence has improved, hence there's more lending in the agriculture sector. Thank you. But I would also give a lot of attribute to Mr. Kobo's institution, GESAL, that has, I think, supported financial institutions to have more confidence in borrowing to agriculture institutions. Now, I'd like to throw a few figures out there that can harness the discussions of today. And looking at these figures, which are actual from my institution being a farmer and trader, it's only buttressed the facts or the factors that the panelists have been speaking on, the lack of framework towards proper coordination and coherence in agriculture being, the biggest challenge of our agriculture sector. Now, when you look at the figures of production in 2020-2021 production season, the cost of production was $1,200 per acreage. 2021-2022, $2,153. 2022-2023, $5,513. 2023-2024, $6,277. And this current year, we are looking at $8,100 as cost of production. So for maize. So you'd realize 2021 or 2020-2021 production cost was $1,200, and 2024-2025 production season we are at $8,100. What are the contributing factors? I'll just take it from three of the inputs: seeds, fertilizer, and land preparation. In 2021, seed per acreage was 100 cedis. NPK 50 kilos was about 42, so making the cost 252 per acreage. And plowing was 90 cedis per acre. Today, same pioneer that was 100 cedis is 1,100. Fertilizer per acreage is 2,820 from 252 in 2020-2021 season, and plowing is 250 cedis. Now, let's look at the market rates of these products. In 2020-2021, so when we look at 0.6%, that's yield per acre. Mr. Kobo mentioned 2.4 per hectare, so in acreage, that's about 0.6%. That means that the farmer is probably yielding 12 bags per 50 kilos. And that 12 bags in 2020-2021 would have yielded 2,482 against a production cost of 1,200. Today, where production is even more challenged, especially that climatic situations, have set in. I think one speaker mentioned maybe in preparation of land, June planting. As it is, the northern sector has not started planting because the rains have failed. So when we look at this year's production of 8,108, if the yield is average at 0.6 again, that means that, and cost of this bag of maize being 250, then we are averaging 3,060 in returns against a production cost of 8,108. So certainly there's a disconnect, and which is not going to augur well for this nation if we want to improve on the poultry sector, which is key, because farmers are continuously losing out. and therefore cutting corners. Who is going to invest 8,000 and gain 3,000 and be, excited about it? We need to get back to the drawing table and get thinking as a country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Queen Lee Joy Smith from the Corporate and Investment Banking Department of Stanbic Bank. Growing up, or as a layperson, when we ask our teachers or our parents what inflation was, the simple explanation to inflation was that inflation is a lot of money chasing very few goods. Now, I'm a firm believer in if inflation was a lot of money chasing fewer goods, why don't we produce a lot to sort of reverse this phenomenon? And so I'm a firm believer in the evolution of farming in Ghana from small-scale farming to large and medium-scale, preferably commercial and industrialization. We've outlined a lot of problems here. I would just want to ask, assuming the government has set the stage and everything is ripe for us to evolve in our ways of farming, how prepared are the farmers in Ghana? How prepared is the sector to take advantage of everything that we are outlining here today? And also from the gentleman's question on who is going to buy what we produce, I just want to know from the World Food Program perspective, what is the role of contract farming in answering his question? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Francis Osei, an agribusiness consultant. I think I want to emphasize the issue of productivity. To me, it's our biggest bane, the productivity issue. For every single crop in this country, we kind of are achieving less than 50% of what is achievable. So, ab initio, we are losing out. And the second major issue, in my view, is our macroeconomic situation that is not helping us, because every single input into the sector, we have to import. So when the cedi depreciates, then means we need more cedis and then to buy $1. And when the goods come, then the prices increase, as our lady said, and it's throwing everything out of the window. I just would like to use maize to illustrate our productivity challenge. All right. Now, typically on a hectare of maize, you want to plant between 64,000 and maybe 84,000, all right, seeds per hectare. Now, if you have a good seed, your cob weight when you shell for one cob, you could be getting about 160 grams, all right. Now, if you multiplied the 64,000 by 160 grams, you'll be getting something like 10.2 tons, just like Kwesi Kobo said and cited for the situation in the US. But we are getting 2.4. So you realize that from day one, we can't compete with any other farmer sitting around the globe who is getting the 10.4. We deliberately, and I'm saying deliberately, I won't go into the details for today because we don't have time. But ab initio, we are lagging behind in productivity. And therefore, when a farmer harvests, the farmer goes to market expecting that somebody will have, I don't want to call it mercy, but you are expecting that all the inefficiencies, that characterize your production, somebody would have some leniency on you and buy. And it doesn't happen in any market. I joke around and say that I don't even think that Bill Gates goes to the market and offers premium when he's given a price. All right. So we've got to, as a country, look seriously at our productivity issue. It's been that forever, and it's the reason why we could not have the challenge of food inflation. And if you know how the inflation is calculated, the food basket weighs more. So we would. It's very likely that if we don't tackle it, we'll continue to have the problem. Right. Then the issue of macroeconomy. I mean, If CD depreciates, it affects prices, then it has a way of affecting interest rates, which move up. So you are paying more for the good, and then you are paying more interest rate for the loan you borrowed. You kind of get out of the market, and it becomes a bit frustrating for farmers. All right, and that for me are two major issues that, based on what I know about the sector, we have to deliberately resolve. Else we'll continue to have this conversation and will not come to an end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's get to the final table.
Thank you. My name is Solomon, and I'm speaking on behalf of Ghanaians who are under 40. I've taken it upon myself. Clearly, food inflation is an existential threat. It's scary and it's worrying. We have listed different problems. We've listed problems with climate change. We've listed problems with financing. But fundamentally, we've also listed a couple of solutions. We've listed countries that have done it and done it right. And those countries that we've listed seem to have done it through policy. Is it not that we have a problem where consistently the people who make policy have called it wrong? And is it because the people who make policy don't know about the industry we are talking about? Is it because they don't understand the agric industry? Isn't it obvious that people have done it? Why can't we replicate the policies that have succeeded? Is our problem so unique that we need Einsteins to rise from the dead and give us new solutions? Because we've all contributed different possible solutions to the problems that we have. Okay. But year in, year out, we have the same problem, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse.
Thank you very much, Solomon. Final question or contribution?
My name is Eric Neboy-Kwote. I've been in banking and compliance. I'm struggling to fit my thoughts into a question, but at least I'll start it.
Or just make it a comment.
Okay, thank you very much. I've lived my life on three very important things. If it says one person's mistake, it's everybody else's problem. And every problem has its own solution. And thirdly, what prevents us from doing things first time right? We have put up so many problems which relate to our problems in Ghana when it has to do with our Greek sufficiency, food inflation. And we have proffered quite a number of solutions to them. But hey, Mr. Kwesi Kobo mentioned three C's, and I want to agree with him. Cohesion, coherence, collaboration, and coordination. Who is coordinating anything here based on all the solutions we have proffered? And I'm grateful to God that Graphic Business and Stanbic has started this thing, but I want to believe that it's only started. It should not end.
Okay.
So, who is that one person who is making a mistake that is becoming a problem for all of us? And what is that solution that we're trying to put to a particular problem, which is not the right solution to the problem? And then several other problems are coming up. Let us seek to do a lot of coordination amongst ourselves, listen to ourselves, because all the problems which have been enumerated are alive with us. And all the solutions which have been proffered here are solutions that will solve our problems. But what problems do we seek to address at the moment? As we speak, the FIC, DOG, and Ministry of Finances embarking on a national risk assessment against money laundering. Can't we have a similar thing for our Greek? Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Let's give him a round of applause. And a round of applause for all of you who've asked questions and have contributed. I am sure nobody's going to blame me for not having had the opportunity. Oh. Last person. Please do it in a minute, because we need to be wrapping up.
All right. Hi, good morning. My name is Mabel, and I'm from the Chamber of Women in Agribusiness. We've spoken a lot, but as the gentleman said, what are the steps? Do we have any policy or decision maker in Agri currently in our midst? How do the informations get to them? The issue about storage, post-harvest, and packaging, it's really a challenge. We look at our tomato now as you started, moderator. You go to the market currently. I was in Okaishi yesterday. A piece of tomato, one single, it's 5 Ghana cedis, and this is no joke. At a certain point in the year, we have it in abundance. What happened? Can't we mimic what other nations are doing? We sit here and talk till tomorrow, but the problem is still on ground. Let's find solution. Let us do something.
Okay.
Let us do something. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's do something. Of course, we are going to do something. Let's get to the panelists. Let's wrap it all up. Let me start off with you, Steve. There was a question for you. Yes.
I think I'll use that opportunity to also give.
Yes, please do that.
All right, great. So I think what we discussed today is basically 4 things: affordability, availability, utilization, and then stability, right? And a prequel to that is the tenets of supply, of storage, and then access to markets. Now, there's a connection between supply and access to markets. So what we are doing with a fund that we are managing currently is to identify what we call agro-champions, connected to what the Ministry of Agriculture is rolling out in its PFJ2 model. Agro-champions, basically, in our definition, are agribusinesses that are facilitating access to inputs, facilitating access to training, and facilitating access to markets for smallholder farmers within their network. Typically, in the past, we would naturally go and target smallholder farmers and see how best we can support them and help them. We are redefining that in working with what we call agro-champions. So it's interesting to note that we've identified 16 agro-champions across the country who are connected to a network of over 150,000 smallholder farmers. And they are off-taking at a value of about 600,000 metric tons of produce from these smallholder farmers through this agro-champion aggregator model. What we are currently doing is that one of the guarantees for an agro-champion or agribusiness connected to smallholder farmers to guarantee that access to markets is when you provide them with a post-harvest related equipment that allows them to be able to transform whatever has been transferred from the farm to the agribusiness for them to process and then attract a better pricing based on the quality. So it's a function of quality of the produce, which then guarantees the market. And you can only guarantee quality of the produce when there are post-harvest equipment at the production stage or at the farm gate, where you're able to thresh, you're able to dry, you're able to sort. And I think that's one of the key missing links within agricultural infrastructure framework that then doesn't allow private sector to go into the space. So the question from the lady on AgriHouse about what are we doing with the agricultural training colleges. So there are about 6 of them in this country. And each of them have a program in post-harvest related infrastructure and training that we are tapping into. We're empowering about just 2 of them, Oahu and then I think Wenchi, with post-harvest equipment to start a mechanization incubator program working in the National Service Scheme. So young people who have graduated from the various agricultural colleges and of course the universities will be sieved into the system and provide training and also provide repair and maintenance support, especially in a country where we have problems with our maintenance culture for post-harvest equipment that we've brought in. So I think the bottom line of the intervention that we should be championing for the Stanbics and the UBAs and all the other institutions that are connected to finding investment-ready enterprises is that find agribusinesses that are connected to large pool of smallholder farmers, work with those agribusinesses, empower them, and then you see the trickle-down effect in terms of they ensuring that the needed certified inputs that the farmers need to maximize yield is actually guaranteed when you focus on a private sector enterprise that is bent on actually improving its net margin, because how they actually improve their net position is based on the quality that the farmer produces for them. And so I think those are the linkages that we are establishing, and that is what we are doing currently. Finally, on the issue of storage, there are about 30 warehouses in this country where you have about 9 of them that we're actually working with through the Ghana Commodity Exchange and providing with the needed capacity strengthening support, which specifically ties to post-harvest equipment that allows farmers connected to these warehouses in the country to come and directly sell to the Commodity Exchange and have their turnaround expected income within a maximum of 24 hours. And so these interventions that are currently doing, so let's not really emphasize on the gloom and doom of nothing really being done. There are a lot of things that are being done, but there are mustard seed investments that have been made for us to realize some sort of results in the next 2 to 3 years. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Steve. Let's get to Nana for his closing thoughts as well.
Yes, thank you very much. Agriculture is an expensive venture. It is an expensive venture, and it's also a very profitable venture. In my view and my experience, I think that we should tackle agriculture extensively. We are doing it piecemeal. We are doing it one at a time. If we are tackling, mechanization or preparation, we are leaving production. If we are tackling production, we are leaving post-production. When are we going to tackle the whole thing as an investment worth investing in? And government should lead it. It is no country who has ever gone ahead or made it through agriculture has had it easy. It is very expensive, ladies and gentlemen. And until government takes it up to invest, let me say bailout. We need a bailout. We need a bailout in terms of mechanization. We need a bailout in terms of low irrigation systems. We as a country, we are producing only during rainy season, and the rains are failing. And as Agrisolve said, we have not started planting. How are we getting the cost of irrigation in this country is expensive. So for some of us who are interested to get into agriculture, how are we even going into it? We need a bailout. Government should come out with an extensive program that will tackle agriculture extensively, not one at a time. We need low-interest financing. In this time and age, we need, if you are going at 35, 38%, how can you make it? And the rains are failing you. But if you look at it that we are investing in agriculture extensively, and government is giving even us a bailout even to produce for the buffer stock, then we have a future. Until we get there, I don't see that. And if government invests in that, it comes then back to the issue of policy. Because of the huge government investment, the policies will have to go right. The coordinations between the policies will have to go right. Because various policies are standing in isolation. And we are producing. We have a glut here where where we have a lot of food getting rotten, and we have scarcity at one place. But if the investment in agriculture is huge, the storage and distribution will be perfect. And government will make sure that it gives right policies to protect the investment that government has put into agriculture. Now, when all is said and done, if government should tackle this extensively as we are looking at, how prepared are we, as somebody said? I always say that resilience in agriculture is the youth. Now, we are having a lot of farmers, a lot of aged farmers. If we get there, and for some of us who are young, we are also growing. We need people, and there's an urgent need to conscientize and to mentor and to let the youth come into agriculture, knowing that agriculture is not just a farming activity, but rather it is an activity from the farm to table. And it has a very, very, very huge value chain, which has a lot of potentials and which is profitable. And that is why on my side, I launched my Rethink initiative when I was the National Best Farmer in 2022, and which is still ongoing. And that is exploring the opportunities along the agricultural value chain to the youth. Indeed, we have touched over 10,000 youth, mostly women, on the opportunities. Because you look at the short term, if the youth should get into it, I always say, getting into agriculture doesn't mean you have to be an agri student. No, I am not an agri student. I am a mechanical engineering student. But I am into agriculture. So you realize that I actually aim more towards mechanization in agriculture. Somebody can be a marketing student. Somebody can be an IT student. And if the IT is looking at distribution, if somebody, because you know something, what you produce, you should not necessarily sell. If the government is not even getting to where we want the government to, and we are encouraging the youth to move into agriculture, whereby they are taking bulk storage, they are packaging, they are branding, they are distributing, we can have the value chain going on in the interim, in the short term. So before government is able to put up what we are envisaging, then the peasant farmer would have ready produce for his goods. And then the demand and supply would balance out. So I think that government should take the initiative. It is a venture if government doesn't take the initiative, trust me, and create the enabling platform for private sector participation, it is going to be very difficult.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nana. And Mr. Kobo, as you wrap up, can you please share some thoughts on funding, really, because you also assist, people in investing in agribusiness. You could just share some thoughts on that as well.
All right, thank you. Sometimes you don't know where to start from, and time, like I said, is our enemy. Because the reality of the situation is this, that you'll be surprised from where I sit that you see a lot of non-agri people going to agribusiness because we finance a lot. That is irrespective of the challenging environment that we face currently. Now, I believe that as a country, and I'm very clear about it to my dying days, that unless we all agree that the way forward for us is to go into large-scale production. And then someone mentioned about maize. If the rains fail, what is our backup plan? Are we going to import maize from abroad or depend on WFP to feed us? But then if you have irrigated maize plantations, which is the same in South Africa, in other African countries, why can't you have the same here? And so it beggars belief that we keep on following the same paradigm. Let's give seed. Let's give fertilizer. What do we get? Nothing. And you just saw that if you take the maize sector, if you set up 50,000 hectares of maize in the private sector, that should be enough to feed our poultry industry easily. And we have an army, and we do over 1 million tons, and we clap ourselves on our back that way. Well, we've given 1 million farmers maize, and our maize prices is one of the highest compared to South Africa. And we want to be self-sufficient in poultry, then we are deceiving ourselves. The second thing is that I think agribusiness, the players themselves, Nana and so forth, I'm also one, actually. I also into plantation myself. We need to come together to change the narrative as Ghanaians. Because the reality is that if you give room for the politicians, they're going to drive their own narratives. And if we don't come together as agribusiness to change that narrative, nothing will happen. There are so many fragmented groupings in this country, various associations, running and doing all kinds of things, but we don't have one body. And let me give you an example. You go to South Africa, you go to Kenya. The Kenyan horticultural sector is one of the most powerful sectors I know of. Collectively, they do more than what we do in cocoa now. And these are a number of companies with well-organized systems. Government gives them the total support. Okay. Take, for example, avocado. Today, Kenya is the largest avocado exporter in Africa. It didn't come from nowhere. There was a concerted effort. The industry setting the pace, the government following. Now, is it the same in Ghana? No. You have a situation where policies are changed every day, and those of us in the sector have no contribution or are unable to direct it to suit what we want. Because the government is doing it for us, not for itself. So unless we come together as a grouping and force government to listen to us, we'll get nowhere. On funding, fortunately, a lot of the banks have now managed to secure funding from other sources. There's MasterCard, there's DBG. MasterCard, for example, some of the lending as low as 4 to 7%. But also from where I sit, I've seen people borrow money at 4% and also not pay. Because the environment also makes it very difficult. Who controls the quality of inputs in this country? It's supposed to be government. Are they doing it? Are the regulators doing it? No, they are not doing it. So, for me, whatever we do, it comes back to the same doorstep. That those of us in agribusiness, and I use this forum, to please, we have to have a way to come together, force the government or any government of the day to listen to us. Because without that, trust me, nothing will happen. Look, if you take Brazil, you've had socialist governments, you've had right-wing governments. We just come from Bolsonaro, who was a right-wing, and now you're in Lula. But if you follow the trajectory of the agribusiness development in Brazil, the policy, nothing changes. It could be right-wing government, it could be left-wing government, it could be centrist, but nothing changes. And over the last 40 years, Brazil has actually changed the agribusiness narrative in the world. Can we do it in Ghana? Yes, we can do it. But we've got to force our politicians, because our politicians, they love numbers. I've given fertilizer to 1 million farmers. So, our maize productivity is 2.48. It was 4, we will clap. That's 2.48. So what has been achieved? Nothing. So my prayer is that let's come together, and maybe Graphic and Stanbic, Kwamina. The problem for fora like these is that we're able to dig deep and come out, because we need time, and come out well thought out. And also sometimes just put one politician from the 2 major political parties, let's put them on the platform and let's question them. Let's force them. Because at the end of the day, I can speak all day long, Nana will speak all day long, so will speak all day long. But where would I get that? It goes through 1 year, comes to another year. But if we force them and challenge them, and trust me, we give them, present them with sets of facts, that this way. So for example, I would like to hold the former Minister of Agric on PFG and ask questions. After all the monies government has spent on acquiring fertilizers, chemicals, seeds, where are we? What has happened? What's the narrative change? Our imports of rice is on the upward trajectory. Maize prices are going up. Yields have not increased. So did we come or did we go? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did we come or did we go? And I'm sure for all of us, we would want to make a move, and the change must start now. Thank you very, very much. And I'm sure Graphic and Stanbic Bank have taken that bit of advice, that next time, maybe we have to get the policy makers, the politicians, because this is the time they are drafting their manifestos. So they sit here, we ask them all the questions, and also make sure that they find themselves in the manifestos, except that sometimes, even in the manifestos, they still don't implement them. But at least that one, you can hold them accountable. Thank you very, very much for joining us for this edition of Graphic Business Stanbic Bank Breakfast Meeting. It's been a great conversation. I'm happy that a lot of you were able to ask questions. This is the end of the second quarter, so we look forward to the third quarter. Do have a lovely day. My name is Winston Amwa. We're out.